Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Today, I have something exciting for you. I have a guest today. My guest is Kim Trang, and she is an expert or a researcher in the field of user experience. And she has a background in data analytics and applied research. Welcome, Kim. Thank you for agreeing to join me. Let's begin with a general question. Uh, I'm curious to know about the path that led you to this field of user experience research, including academic and non-academic and experiences that led you to this point.
Yeah, so I would say like my path to UX is it's a winding path. And as I'm finding out just kind of through being in the field and talking to other people, a lot of people's paths towards UX was also winding. The reason I say that is because I have never heard of UX when I was in graduate school. I didn't know that this field existed and this is something that you could have a career in. So I have a PhD in educational psychology. So I went to school to study. My program was human development, and so that's what I studied. I focused on child development and adolescent development, and then so that was half of my program, and then the other half was on research method and statistics. And so I really, I would say that's probably foundational research skills came from was from graduate school. And then after graduate school, I did a lot of applied research, and I really enjoyed the applied work because it's not the stuff that they teach you in school. There's a lot of like intricacies and like, your data is just not as clean as it was presented in school. So there's a lot of like complexities around applied research, which I enjoy. Also really, really enjoy working with people as well. And then after that, I started, how I came to UX was I started getting more interested on the front end kind of design work. So this was when I was working at a local public health center where I'm at in Missouri, and I was doing a lot of data visualization work. So I was essentially going kind of beyond the step of just analyzing my data and, doing the reporting. I was having to kind of think about the extra step about how do I present this to the general public? How do I make sure that people understand this graphic? Is this graphic communicating what I think it's communicating? So I really got interested in that work, and that's kind of how I ended up in my current position, which is more UX focused. And it's doing UX research and design for a healthcare nonprofit. We're based in Cincinnati, Ohio. So I would say, I think it kind of drew me to UX is really kind of that, I've always been interested in design. So it's really that kind of an area where helping me apply that research skills that I had and that I developed in graduate school, but then combining it with kind of the design aspects of it.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that data visualization aspect, because we forget, as people who sometimes present a graph, a figure to an audience, somebody who has spent a lot of time designing that graph might forget that for an audience who is seeing the graph for the first time, it's a different experience. So, and it's worth paying attention to how other people pay attention to this, how they grasp it or how they fail to grasp it if you present it too quickly to them.
Yeah, for sure. Like what hit me initially about that was I was designing essentially dashboards to present like COVID data during the height of the pandemic. And so like people were looking at my graphics and my data to make decisions about, how they're going to conduct their behavior during COVID. And my stakeholders were using that data and those kind of data visualizations to make decisions for the public, for our community. And so that really made me think even extra about like, are my graphics communicating what they're supposed to be communicating?
So could you also say a few words about how you see your unique perspective on this really huge and growing field of user experience? UX is really different. People mean different things by it. And when you think about your position, what do you think what is in your view distinct and unique about that? What is it that some other UX people are doing, UX researchers are doing that you are not doing?
Yeah. So, I'm still kind of new to the field and still learning about it as well. So what really kind of drew me to UX is kind of in the title, user experience, and really centering our work around the users or the people that we're serving. We don't have to use the word users, but the people that we serve, who they are, what their needs are and what their values are, and how we can provide essentially that service for them. And I think that's really, for me, at the center of UX is kind of like that service orientation that we are providing a service, like whether that's a tech product or some other kind of service or some other things that we're providing to our users. How do we make their lives better? How are we addressing their needs? So I think that's kind of what really drew me to it. I think there's a lot of, like you said, it's very big. So I think there's a lot of room and opportunities for a lot of different voices, and a lot of different kinds of researchers in the world UX. So I guess just kind of to share an example is, if I were, for example, would be in academia, like where I got my graduate degree at the KU, a lot of the people I work with would be essentially researchers within my field of interest, so educational psychology researchers. I think what's unique about UX research is I could be working with other researchers not of my background. So they may be like qualitative researchers, or they may come from background that's ethnography research, or like anthropologists, just a lot of different kinds of research skills and backgrounds, I think, is valued in research, and I think or value in UXR, and I think that's it's what's interesting about it is because people are coming from different backgrounds and sharing their research and experiences to essentially kind of solve the problem. How do we make our products or our services better for the people that we serve?
Yeah, I'm really happy that you pointed out that service orientation. Of course, that might not be a universally applied statement or sentiment. For some people, it might be like optimizing how to grab the audience's attention, or how to make someone addicted to this smartphone app or something. That could also fit into UXR. But that service orientation really frames it in a very different way, more inspiring to me and more humanistic. Yeah, so you already touched on this, but my next question was, for people who are new to the field of UX research, what are some, like a couple, we don't have to be exhaustively covering all the principles, but what are some fundamental assumptions that you would point out to them? Yeah, go ahead.
So I would say the first thing that I kind of learned was like this is actually, it happens in academia as well. There's the same terminology, like there's different terminologies for the same thing, right? So one of the first things that I had to kind of wrap my head around was to better understand how we talk about different research methods, or what is the language of research in the UXR field. So an example would be like UXR like talks about like generative research or discovery research is that kind of that process you do at the very beginning. And I was always, I always called it exploratory research, where, what I learned and where I come from. And so I really had to kind of learn those different terminologies that I thought were different methods, but they were just different terminologies for the same kind of idea, the same kind of concept. So I would advise anyone who's interested in UXR to really, kind of take a deeper dive and just really look at those kind of different terminologies and similar. You'll find that a lot of similarities across in terms of like the research methods across different fields that's used in UXR. So be wary of that. And I think really kind of the, I guess just kind of the advice there really is that I think a lot of people coming into UXR that's new think they have to learn, they have to start over. They have to be like a graduate student again and go through like a master's in human computer interaction or a PhD even in order to work in UXR. But I think that a lot of people find that they have really that foundational research knowledge already if they have gone through like a master's oriented research or even a PhD, and that they just really need to translate their skills over to UXR, right? If they've done like ethnographic research, or they've done diary studies, for example, then with different populations. So it may not be in a product development kind of context, but they've shown that they can do those research skills. It's really about translating to how you would potentially do something similar, like conduct a similar type of study in like a product like a product context.
So the logic is transferable. And yeah, what I heard there was an invitation not to be intimidated by all this superficial novelty of the field, and have some faith that some of the things that you know at a deeper level might be transferable, and you might find some of the old things again under or in a new guise, like exploratory research shows up in a different with a different terminology, like discovery research.
Exactly. And honestly, that's kind of what I've found out as an applied researcher. So when I worked in public health, for example, that's not like I have no background in public health, right before the pandemic. But I found that a lot of the the research that I was doing, like the methods I was using, was very similar to the research I was doing in education. So it's really like really understanding what the foundational skills are, and then really thinking about how you could apply your skills to a different setting. And I think a lot of times, I think people new to Phil, I think they'll find that they're very capable of doing that. It's just about how to think about it and how to express that in like a potential interview or something like that.
Yeah, so to do that effectively, almost you can't escape but be ethnographic user experience of your own experience in this new field. For you, that was healthcare. Like, okay, I need to get to know this field and my place in it, and what my own like fit. How do I fit in it? That's the kind of research process itself.
Exactly. No, I like exactly what you said. You kind of have to do your own research on yourself to see kind of where you fit in the new field. Absolutely. And that's really what I had to do, is to kind of really understand, well, this is a new field for me. What do I need to learn about public health or healthcare in order to essentially do the work that I need to do to help answer those research questions? What data do I need to collect that's important? I in a field like education, where it was my field, I knew exactly what were the key metrics, what were the indicators that were important, what were the research questions that people are asking, right? But in a new field, I didn't know all of that, and so that's where I think kind of new people in UXR should absolutely reach out for help, because that's what I did. I had to, when you're in a new field or you're transitioning into a different industry, you have to kind of reach out for somebody who who's been there before and who has more expertise than you, to really ask them, how can I be successful in this field? What are some of the philosophies and some of the ideas and the concepts in this field I need to kind of be aware of, so you can think about those things and then think about how you fit in.
Great. So you already touched on my next question, which is misunderstandings and misconceptions. One being the one that you already said was, it's not the case necessarily that everything that you're encountering is new, fundamentally new from top to bottom. Some of it could be at the bottom level, at the core, at its core might be familiar patterns that you might kind of find again. You have to give yourself time to discover. Any other misunderstandings of UX research that you'd like to clarify?
Sure. Yeah, I would. So we talked about how UXR is a big field, not just in terms of like the different kinds of people that it involves,
Right.
but there's a lot of different titles too when it comes to like UXR. It's like UX researcher, design researcher, just a lot of different titles. And I think that one of the misconceptions that I run into a lot is that UX research is the same as UX design. In reality, they're two different they're essentially two different jobs, and they have different skill sets under each of these titles. But I think a lot of times people get them confused, and then people think that you have to be like this generalist, which means you have to be a top-notch researcher and a high-quality designer as well. And that's a lot on one person. I myself had that kind of misconception as well, to be honest. And so I thought that I really had to develop even more kind of beyond the design skills that I already have or was interested in, to develop even more. And then I got to the point where I realized that wasn't the case, and that you didn't need to be a generalist and be this unicorn essentially in UX. That if you are very interested in research and like that's your focus area, be a researcher and do your research work, and then showcase that work and put yourself out there as a specialist.
We can use that analogy, what you said, the point, we can make that point using the analogy of biological science or psychology. We don't have to be able to create an organism first and then do research on it. Or for me, my background is in psychology and neuroscience. You don't have to be able to create a brain in order to start researching it or doing research on it. The brain is there, or some things that are designed are already there. They can be, they can be examined with a research perspective. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
So, what are the types of projects, the type of projects that you're currently working on? And I'd like to know a little bit about the path that you envision moving forward in this field. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So as I shared earlier, I'm at a nonprofit right now, and we do so we do a little bit of public health type projects, and we also do other kind of healthcare type projects. But the department that I'm working on is healthcare technologies, and so what we do is we develop web-based applications for our customers, which are healthcare providers. So our healthcare providers are small to medium-sized businesses that typically can't afford some of those larger technology solutions, like big electronic health record digital solutions, for example. And so we develop pretty much like those kind of technologies on a smaller scale. And so that's kind of the work that I'm supporting. So I'm supporting that work by doing the research and design and some product management. So I talk a little bit about not being a generalist, but here's another thing that I forgot to mention is your role a lot of times and responsibilities in UX is going to be dependent on the type of organization you work at. So for me specifically at a smaller nonprofit with a single UX team, that's me, you do have to take on more of a generalist role. So you do have to do the research and have some fundamental design skills, and in order to really help your organization move their projects and move their products forward. But if you were to work in an organization that's just larger, it's just bigger companies or something where they really have grown out their UX team, where they have dedicated researchers and designers, then you can specialize. And so I guess just kind of for the viewers who are thinking about going to UX, just kind of make sure that which, when you are applying, like what kind of organizations are you applying to, and then what's the maturity of their UX program. Watch out for that, because you might find yourself wanting to be a specialist and do a UXR role, but then end up having design stuff dump on you as well, which I personally don't mind. I like my job because I do like to do design work sometimes as well. And so, yeah, so where I'm going next? Yeah, I have a 5-year plan. That's a hard question, but I enjoy what I do, and I think for me, just kind of my career path and working in kind of different industries, I really do take kind of that service kind of orientation, where I like to solve problems for people. And so I kind of see myself continue kind of working in UXR, just potentially maybe in a bigger organization as well, to really kind of get that more specialized UXR experience.
Wow, nice, really great. Thank you so much, Kim, for being hopefully the first in a series of my first guest in a series of interviews on this topic in this field. I'm very grateful. Hopefully, this will not be our last conversation, either both recorded or not recorded. I really enjoyed listening to you. This is kind of my own, as I said to you before we started recording. I am interested in this field of UX research more from a philosophical standpoint. I'm curious about it, and this gave me a lot to think about, very concrete, and yeah, great interviewee. And thanks again. Any final words? Just saying goodbye to the viewers, and then, yeah.
Sure. Thank you for having me on this
My
on your
pleasure.
channel. I appreciate the questions that you asked. I think they're really poignant. I think that there are a lot of really important questions, just kind of to ask, kind of in this context. Yeah, I thank you for having me, and for the viewers, if you have any other questions for me, interested in connecting, please reach out on LinkedIn, and happy to connect with you and share my experiences as well.
Great, great. Thank you.